Hello again. Today's footage is continuing on the board and batten, well, on the batten and trim, actually. And just working on this east side of the trailer to just make it look pretty, well, and seal it in. It makes quite the difference not having the gaps between the boards. And it's been kind of funny to see Emily's reaction as the boards have dried. The gap on some of them, as you can see, grows fairly wide. I mean, up to quarter, maybe even half an inch in some cases. So that's why the battens are designed to be 2 inches plus, so that you don't have to worry about that. It's amazing how much discretion the trim covers and hides. So that's where we're at, though. It's a pretty straightforward process. The challenge is just trying to make sure the angles are exact, and then trying to get everything wrapped around the rafters. So I think in future builds, when I do the rafters and the purlins, I think I'm going to put a little block in between each purlin where the wall is going to be. That way I don't have to worry about that gap not being filled in. Because it does take a little bit of extra effort to get the trim to wrap around there and have it look and seal good. I left it open thinking that it was going to be a good thing to have insulation up there, because we plan on doing the spray foam insulation, so it would, if sprayed properly, it would go and fill in that gap and seal that in. But I think it'll be better to just leave a block there so you don't have to worry about it. And you can kind of see here what I'm talking about. I'm trying to get a piece that will be basically a 90-degree angle that doesn't break on me, because you've got a little small piece of wood there. But then it also has to have a 45-degree angle on it for the next piece of trim to get that to look proper. And I guess I could have just butted the trim up at a 90-degree angle instead of a 45-degree angle, but it does look better to have the 45s. So now that's in place, I'm just making sure this bottom piece is there, and now I can move over. And I ended up deciding to do this differently and hope that I could save myself hassle from trying to reach around the bump out area. And instead of trying to do a little L-shaped piece like I did on this I guess technically it's the second rafter from the right, I ended up just taking the trim that's going across the top and just cutting a notch out, so that end piece will go above the rafter to block the to continue that look. And then the right side of that board will actually have the 45-degree angle. And I did take a couple of attempts to fit it, and I wanted to make sure I got that as tight as possible, so I'm putting it up and seeing how tightly it fits, and then seeing how far I need to, how much I need to trim off of it, and then go back over and trim it, and then test the fit again. This Japanese pull saw that I'm using was one of the gifts Emily got me for Christmas, I believe, a few years ago. And I don't have any real strong opinion one way or the other about Japanese construction techniques. I mean, it's kind of cool that they do things, with all kinds of mortises and tenons, and then mortise and a mortise and a tenon that basically hold the previous one in place, and then you put a pin through another mortise to like lock everything in place. It's kind of cool, but the real reason we actually got the pull saws is because I hate push saws. They've never made sense to me because I always have a challenge, and maybe it's just the ergonomics of my body versus how the saw needs to be used. But I have never tried to use a push saw and had it not bind and bend on me. And the bigger the saw is and the thinner the kerf, the more likely it is to bind and bend. It's just the physics of it don't make sense to me. You're trying to push a thin piece of metal and hope that it grabs the wood and doesn't bend when you're putting a lot more force into it to get it to grab the wood than it takes to make the metal bend. Whereas with a pull saw, it's the opposite. Like you're pulling the blade along to grab those teeth, so no matter how hard you pull, it can't bind, because I guess it could theoretically bind if you're pulling at an angle, twisting it, things like that. But if you're just using the saw, pulling it along, the teeth can't cause it to bind because you're pulling. The physics just don't allow that to happen. So I've over the years have had a couple of pull saws, little limb saws and things like that, and they just work amazingly so well that I've used them for other projects than limbs. In fact, I've got a little, I don't remember the brand, little red and black foldable pull saw that's supposed to be for like up to branches up to like 4 inches or something. It's like a 6-inch or 8-inch blade, and I love that thing. In fact, I was using that in the video the other day when I was making the 1x1 stickers as I was milling, and it's just a great little saw. I've never had it bind, I've never had it get stuck, but these Japanese pull saws are even better than that one in a lot of ways. The teeth are designed differently, so you have to have one that's designed for ripping and one that's designed for cross-cutting, and they really don't like it when you try and do the wrong task, but they actually work extremely well. So that was a pretty cool gift that's come in very, very handy as I've been building this and doing other stuff. So as you can see, these gaps, they just disappear once you start putting these batons up. And the only real challenge with them is just making sure they look good and that they're, straight. Once you get them all trimmed to the right length, they go up super fast. Like the boards, I put a 20-degree back bevel on the batons, so any water that does get on them will drip, and as it gets to the bottom of the board, it can't, like gravity will pull enough that theoretically it can't absorb any water, because it'll pull all towards that point that's the farthest out from the building. And once I got those in place, it's just a matter of continuing on, get the trim up, and then take the next piece and get some measurements. And These next batten pieces are a little bit more challenging just because there's an angle at the top, so they can't be all cut to one size. But that's not really a huge deal. It's actually pretty simple to, as long as you remember that you're cutting the roofing angle, not the trim angle at 45 degrees, then they're pretty simple. Fortunately, I haven't made that mistake more than the once. The boards, when you put them up, it's actually a little bit easier. It's kind of nice because when you cut one, you can literally just put the next one up to it, and you have the right mark. As long as you have that roofing angle correct, then you just put the next one up, mark where it is, set your cut board aside, make your next cut, grab the new board, set that next to the one you just finished, and you can literally do an entire wall without having to take another measurement. Let's see, I cut these ones actually a little bit longer than they needed to be, just specifically so that I could make sure they were all at the right point. And so I'm just cutting that back bevel on them. And this one was a little bit of a fuss, so I had to fight with it to get it in place. I've actually been rather surprised. I think I've mentioned a few times that the siding here is all cottonwood, which is why there's such a significant overhang on the trailer. Because cottonwood is not known for its rot resistance, but it is pretty wood. I really like the grain and the look of it. And we'll probably use an oil-based sealer, and go around probably next summer once everything's had a good amount of time to dry properly and completely, and we'll take care of that. But I don't think I'll ever use a latex sealer because two main reasons. When you refresh the latex, you actually have to remove the old before you can put on the new. If it's started to peel at all, at least, if it's come loose at all. So that's the first reason. The contrast is that the oil, you just apply new oil to it over the old. You don't have to even sand it or anything if you don't need to. But the other reason is as I've mentioned in a few videos, I've got some pretty somewhat challenging lung issues as a result of smoking when I was younger, and one of those is the chronic bronchitis that gets triggered by chemicals. And oddly enough, a lot of the oil paints, if it's an oil artistic paint, for some reason that triggers the chronic bronchitis super quickly. But like the oil-based stains are apparently a completely different chemical base, completely different oil, and they don't affect me as much. The other reason is that the latex products, I have actually developed an allergy to latex because I wore gloves as an EMT, and in hospital settings at various jobs a long time ago, and that's kind of created a difficulty for us, in that the one of the side effects, or I don't remember the proper term for it, but there's a lot of fruits and vegetables that are very similar to latex in their chemical structure, and you can actually develop an intolerance to those, so you get a lot of stomach and digestive issues as a result of eating those. And it first showed up with kiwi, which is horrible because I love kiwi. And then it showed up in bananas, and that's horrible because I love bananas. In fact, kiwi, strawberry, and banana are three amazing flavors that can be combined with all kinds of stuff and make amazing desserts and juices and smoothies and whatever. It then showed up with avocado, and that's when I started to realize that I think that there was something going on, and was able to finally start putting some pieces together, because you search for kiwi, banana, and avocado, and you start to get other issues and signs of what's going on. So anyway, that's been an interesting challenge. So this is where the camera ended up dying for the day, but you can see I'm working on getting little pieces of trim around the bump out. So as always, stay safe. God bless you and yours, and thank you for your time today.